Greetings everyone, and welcome back, dear Bilgehan.
Greetings to you all. It feels like an anniversary. We had started this reading and commentary series together a year ago, at the end of last October. And here we are together, again.
Yes, we completed a cycle, and also a year in this series.
We follow the flow of life. And we started with you, and then you continued with our other members. Tumarhan, Umit, Oya, Gultakin. The videos you made with them were so beneficial, so informative. Thank you all.
As we underlined strongly when we started this series with you, our comments we made in the videos through our current understanding are not written in stone. And the knowledge given in this book is so profound that whenever we reread its passages, we feel as if we read these concepts for the first time. Because we change in the meantime, we are dynamic creatures after all. What do you think?
Of course, we change. Each time, as I check my notes I made in the margins of the printed book or the bookmarks I added in the PDF version, and I wonder why I didn't make notes in another passage. As if I am seeing that passage for the first time. Because that passage gives a new meaning to the new me, and as we change, the quality of the events we encounter in life change as well. Change is good.
A year ago, when we started this series, it was the most intense period of the COVID pandemic. The number of our dear friends attending our weekly online streaming grew each week. They helped us with their presence, their questions, comments, and feedback. And when I read their comments about reading and rereading this book, by taking notes, underlining sentences, and rewatching the videos of previous weeks, I feel so happy that together we brought out this mutual field of studying. I am grateful. Yes, we agree that narrative of this book, of the divine order and the universe, needs efforts from the readers, still, as it is stated at the first page of this book. It is a bridge in our universe, between that path of light that we can only name as evolution, and which reaches across to the knowledge of mankind. It is a gift of the divine order given to mankind. Yes, a gift is given to us. But how do we receive this gift? As our world advances toward completely different directions when compared with last year's conditions. How do you look at this gift?
Well, first of all, about this pandemic and diseases without a known cause. I must admit that I had read this sentence in this book. Towards the last cycles of the world back then some diseases had emerged for which mankind did not know the reason. But I had not highlighted or underlined it. Obviously, I did consider this as an essential information when I read the book first time and overlooked it. Yet, what I didn't take into consideration at all, stopped the usual hustle and bustle of life on the whole world. Second, last year, whenever I tried to converse with people about what they were going through, I understood that each person has gone deeper and farther in their own belief system because there was nothing else to do, everything else was almost stopped and everybody else was locked in their homes. Yes, for the first 1 or 2 weeks, people baked sourdough breads, pancakes, all kinds of food that request time and attention. Then, people cleaned their houses, repaired some neglected problems around the house. Then, things to do were finished, and they asked, what to do? What to do? And they were compelled to turn inward. And this inward anxiety and uncertainty were more obvious in people who got infected but had lighter symptoms caused by this virus. And yes, this questioning is still continuing because the pandemic is still on. Will I feel worse tomorrow? I feel relatively fine now, but what if I need to be intubated? Will I need to be hospitalized? Like the patients in the ICU units? Such questions and thoughts led people to be closer to the possibility of dying and to the concept of a hereafter. We got the taste of this compelling drive to go deeper into our inner world. We got the taste of the fact that we have almost no control over the situations of life, and we began to notice or intuit that we are living the application of meeting the requirements of an agreement we made even before we are born. And, even the main process was same for everyone. Of course, each person experienced and expressed this within his or her own culture and belief system by displaying relevant actions, rituals, behaviors, so they can ensure some good place in the hereafter. I heard their questioning during my conversations with people, such as, "How come so suddenly things changed in the whole world? We were making money, but what's the use now? Is this pandemic a punishment or a consequence? What is the message of this virus? What is our purpose in life?"
Yes, one of the most frequently questioned issue is properties and goods we own. Let's say you have 10 pairs of shoes but you cannot wear any of them and go out walking. You have many suits in many colors, but you cannot wear these to go out to socialize. You have a brand new sports car, but you can't drive it around. Last year, the most expensive and the cheapest turned out equal. As you said, this mandatory or compelling change in the usual way of life, each of us had to do applications of conscience. And we had observed both the obscured and the explicit applications of conscience, which are strongly emphasized in the divine order and the universe as the leading factors for widening of comprehension. Yes, up to some degree there is some awakening. Still, as we go back to so-called normalcy, we can easily go back to our deep sleep. And of course, just because of this, it seems that humanity will attract further and more compelling shocks for a proper awakening.
Well, we will hope for what is most beneficial for all beings. Look at me, I neglected a sentence in this book and how it took me by surprise. Imagine all other sentences and knowledge we neglect and overlook, and you can guess what kind of hardships we in future generations have to go through. We will see, we'll observe as these happen.
Last week, we concluded the passages on the mechanisms of mediumship and obsession. This week, we will start reading the topic of inspiration. Yes, let's start reading. We see it as helpful to talk a little as well about some communications that are called inspiration, and which put into effect the manifestations that mankind call genius, creativity in the life of sciences, arts and ideas. These are influences which are not connected to great plans of duty, and which depend on the ordinary and average mechanism of communication we mentioned above, and are sent by mediator beings in duty, such as guarding and assisting beings who want to help with individual and some communal states of mankind. Here, trance is not needed either, for trance is a state put into effect with the purpose of decelerating the motions of the brain centers in response to the surroundings in a state akin to sleep, so influences coming from the surroundings can be removed during the flux of a long communiqué. However, in inspirations, there is no such sending of influences for long durations. These come intermittently, and in short periods which can be deemed as a moment.
In this passage, what strikes my attention is this phrase. Sent by mediator beings in duty, such as guarding and assisting beings who want to help with individual and some communal states of mankind. So, such inspirations may occur in the fields of science and arts. Yes, the examples we may think of are mostly individual, yet most of the time, these individual inspirations lead to some communal situations. Soon, we will see more encompassing examples of such communal situations as we read on the passages on religions. Still, what can be those inspirations that help to individual and some communal states of mankind? One example may be the conclusion some individuals arrived at as a result of their concentrations of thinking and thoughts in the field of ideas, in the field of philosophy, and such results were recorded as books, essays, articles, and these become the necessary literature, the famous texts and books. Or a scientist, namely, Richard Feynman, who has been thinking deeply on an elusive solution to a problem, sees a student throws and spins plates on the floor at the campus canteen, and suddenly gets an inspiration by this motion of the plate and understands how the charged particles behave, and consequently, introduces a mechanics that started everything in a stagnant period of time for the quantum physics. And yes, this is a knowledge coming as an inspiration, and such influences come to us when our concentration on nature or the state of consciousness just before we sleep combine our thoughts with unconscious or subconscious imagery. And, I am sure our dear friends know that Albert Einstein was doing imaginative work which he named thought experiments. And in those moments just before sleep, which is called hypnagogic state, inspiration comes like a flash. Just as Archimedes. He had noticed while taking a bath that the level of the water in the tub rose as he got in, and in a flash, he understood the buoyancy force of water and he shouted, "Eureka!" And of course, no inspiration comes to a person who does not concentrate or ponder upon something deeply. Actually, the hours or maybe longer periods of concentration on the problem at hand, and also, all related information and knowledge that led to this concentration are combined and compressed, and this accumulation only needs a spark to explode into a conclusion, into a solution. And we read in this passage that influences from mediator beings in duty, such as guarding and assisting beings, are described as inspirations. So, these are middle-level communiqués. We can think of those beings as beings that reach the initial steps of the plan of duty. As we read in the divine order and the universe, the first tasks assigned to such beings are guarding and guiding humans. So, when we complete the human stage and reach the initial levels of the plan of duty, our beings will be given such tasks, so, please don't think that this is a simple duty.
For receiving such influences, a trance state is not needed. Yet you mentioned the need for a state of concentration, or these occur at hypnagogic state, that alpha state of brain waves between the wakefulness and sleep. And we had discussed the importance of dreams, especially the dreams occur due to the influences coming from the higher consciousness of the being. And also how some special influences from the guiding beings or some beings in duty are conveyed to the human, again, via the mechanism of dreams. Dear friends, please watch our previous videos for these discussions because we shared many examples of such dreams that we deem as intuitive. Most of the time symbolic but containing important information about higher levels of our own being. And we know the examples of musicians saying that, "I heard some notes, and I used these notes to compose this song." Or scientists having flashes of inspiration, either in dreams or while engaging daily activities. Or artists saying, "I saw the whole picture in my mind, then I painted it." However, as you said, in order to actualize the result of such inspirational influences, a person needs some know-how about it. Let's say, a musician needs to know musical notes to compose, an inventor needs intention and concentration for a possible solution to a problem, etc. Because, when we receive such influences or even to be able to receive such influences, we need to be proper channels for such inspirations to be manifested in the world, either as ideas, books, compositions, paintings, inventions, discoveries, etc. At least, we should be able to concentrate on or meditate on a topic.
Of course. Because such concentration is also like a trance state. I am sure that our friends already experienced such instances, or they can experience it easily. I mean, if there is a question very important for their development, for their evolution, that is, a proper and necessary question preoccupying their mind, if they concentrate on this question for a certain period of time each day, that is, by meditating or contemplating on this question, at some point of relaxation, they have a dream or an image or symbol in their mind's eye, or they remember a certain scene from an old movie they watched, or they hear someone saying a word or a sentence which functions as the answer to that question. It brings an insight, a new understanding. And it happens that at first, we cannot even think that as an answer and worry that we couldn't concentrate enough, we didn't meditate properly, etc. I easily say this, because almost all of us have gone through such self-doubt. Later, we may understand that that image or recollection or the word we heard had already influenced something within us. We may see this in hindsight. I mean, such answers to such questions are not far away from us. We even don't need mediums or psychics to learn or hear answers to our questions. Some disciplined concentration practice may help us. After all, we are meant to look for answers in this way.
Yes, as I understand from this passage, if we want to receive a guidance, an intuition, we don't need to go into a deep trance. When we project our attention and concentration towards that issue, we receive answers and guidance, even if intermittent and momentary manner. Because of this manner of inspirations, we need to be observant about ourselves. All right. Now we will read some topics which are explained in lengthy passages. Because of this, I'd like to pause at some points to discuss what we read, and then continue reading the rest of the passage at hand. Let's continue reading. Knowledge given to the world by the beings in duty through mediums put into effect very major movements, which are generally related to communal plans. From time to time, in some extremely exceptional situations, sublime beings of the plan of duty ascend to the world as themselves, and act both as ruler and as guides to the right path, in order to evoke a major movement among mankind, and to have them acquiring mass breakthroughs, to give cultivating knowledge related to general and communal orders, regulations and methods, in short, to ensure their fast evolution in the world. These powerful beings have caused great and mass revolutions in the world, with the institutions of religion they established to disseminate among mankind the higher knowledge they receive from the sublime plan of duty to which they are always connected. Great religions, which were established in this way and displayed strong influences within the communal plans, have ensured that consciences reach higher levels through their strong and orderly sanctions. Religions with this side of them are of the vehicles for preparing mankind to the plans of duty. Religions have put into effect the current high and evolved state of the world, and have ensured the initial communal preparations of the next great transition cycle, and each of them, within their own constitution, have shown to mankind the most appropriate ways of preparing for the plan of duty, by responding to the various and differing needs, imperatives and necessities of their own times. Each religion, by saving mankind from the darkness of ignorance, has led them to the great divine path with the profound intuitions they have given within the directives, examples, symbols and knowledge in accordance with the time and necessities. All religions have helped mankind in elevating the level of reality equilibrium line of their conscience mechanisms to the uppermost levels of their possibilities of comprehension, which are within the allowance of the necessities particular to that moment.
Yes, let's discuss this part of the passage. We read that religions gave mankind profound intuitions within the directives, examples, symbols and knowledge they contain, and that are suitable for the time and necessities. And when you hear the word religions, please do not only think about the last three major religions. Of course, we may consider those as the religions of the book, but throughout the human history we know, a belief system given to each human community by an embodied representative of the plan of duty, for guidance and for pointing to a connection to higher levels, so those human communities can pass to another level, to a new era, to a new cycle of comprehension. And as far as I can understand that, the individuals that couldn't harmonize with the new and higher influences were somehow filtered, and their beings were led to build bodies that born into more suitable communities. And the individuals that could harmonize with these new and higher influences were able to do applications of these knowledge in their daily life, and consequently, advance themselves in thinking, action, social life and matters regarding higher levels of being. However, when we look at the whole picture, we always see a gradual but relentless advancement. For example, the science of our times was the natural philosophy of 3 or 4 centuries ago, and was the mystic knowledge of much earlier times. It looks like the knowledge given from higher plans and the advancement in social or communal life progress in tandem. And whenever a moral or ethical corruption begins in a community, which is called degeneration, then it means that the connection, interest and concentration towards the higher levels of existence decrease. Because the efforts made for understanding higher levels of existence mean that there are efforts members of a given community made for self-knowledge, and communities that spend efforts in this direction does not go through moral corruption. However, when such a filtering becomes necessary, when the spiritual plans, so to speak, to separate the chaff from the grain, then, the darkest hour of the night happens, the darkest period just before the breaking of the dawn. And when the sun rises, then the light prevails. And this cycle of degeneration and regeneration occur throughout the history of humankind, in each and every community of humans. Again, we don't only talk about the last three religions, the beings with this great duty of revelations, although they are closely connected to the plan of duty and willingly shouldered this duty, the conditions they are born into are same for the other embodied human beings. I mean, they are not given some more oxygen-rich air or more intelligence. That is, their lifetime is not easier than the rest of the humankind, and mostly, it is the exact opposite. Through the hardships they experience, through the other people they met, through their family members etc. these beings with duty are oriented towards the time and place they will execute their duty of revelation.
An important point is mentioned in this passage. I mean, the purpose behind all of those is so important. To evoke a major movement among mankind, and to have them acquiring mass breakthroughs, to give cultivating knowledge related to general and communal orders, regulations and methods. Your words about the life experiences of the prophets reminded me the book of Edward Schur, titled as The Great Initiates, and we had read in that book how and what each great initiate or prophet changed in their cultural era. And as you said, for a new improvement or renewal to occur, the existing current reality has to be completed, finished, consumed. Because of this we see the coming of a new idea, a new understanding, a new breakthrough arrives only after the great degenerations, because the obsolete knowledge becomes degenerated, actually completes its cycle. And when we consider the fact that our own being is an inseparable part of the higher plans providing this immense coordination within this divine order, if the connection between the essence beings and their human beings is cut off due to the deep immersion of humans into the earthly cravings, into the worldly appearances, or in other words, if we humans forget the true needs of our own being, then a renewal and a reconnection becomes necessary, and most of the time, happen as an aftermath of social or physical disasters. And this phrase is important as well. From time to time, in some extremely exceptional situations, sublime beings of the plan of duty ascend to the world.
We read here. Sublime beings of the plan of duty ascend to the world as themselves and act both as ruler and as guides. As themselves. But it does not mean the each and every being in duty at the plan of duty. No, it means that a being from the plan of duty is born into the world. And please, do not imagine the plans of duty as individual beings that are hand in hand or embracing each other in a group hug. Such visualizations are due to our worldly and subjective understanding of a unity or cooperation. If you watched our previous videos, you may remember the parts we discussed the plan of duty. We had used the simile of a single voice made out of innumerable voices. So, you may visualize a being with that kind of duty as the single voice of the myriad voices of the other beings in the plan, so, indeed, all of those beings have the same duty. And the rest of the sentence is also important. Sublime beings of the plan of duty ascend to the world as themselves and act both as ruler and as guides to the right path. So, this is not only a duty of telling humans about the higher plans, higher influences, there is also the duty of applying this knowledge within the social life of that community, hence, the duty of advancing the social development of that community. How? By behaving properly, and consequently, by working to make the community to act in virtuous ways in accordance with the time period of that community. Because the importance of executing these two duties in tandem, these type of beings with duty act both as ruler and as guides, and I say this in the context of teachings needed for the communal advancement and improvements of those earlier times of religions.
This part of the sentence you mentioned made me think about the beings that were very influential rulers in the history of some countries. Not only in our country but in many countries. I mean, those beings are born into this world with such talents and with such life plan organizations that when we study their life story, we see that things were not accidental in their life. Their life looked dedicated and planned in minute details for manifesting a certain outcome. I don't think they are aware of this as they live their life, because their life is almost always full of hardships and struggles, yet the function they did are beyond their individual community. Only when we look at the history, we can see that such rulers were also beings with duty. What do you think?
You may be right. Let's widen the scope of this sentence. This is not only valid for prophets but also human beings with higher duty that led their communities and countries to a new era. For example, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. He changed an era for the Anatolian people. Well, not only for the Anatolian Turks but as a role model for all other peoples in countries under the yoke of imperialism. He even said this: we don't fight only for our country, but also for other countries. So, Ataturk and Gandhi, their rulership were successful, as well as their guidance. Because, with their wider perspective, they also provided a wider religious understanding in their respective countries.
Yes. What we read in the last sentence is very important. All religions have helped mankind in elevating the level of reality equilibrium line of their conscience mechanisms to the uppermost levels of their possibilities of comprehension, which are within the allowance of the necessities particular to that moment. So, the symbols and symbolic narrative of the religions are given to people of their respective eras in accordance to the uppermost levels of their possibilities of comprehension, and also within the allowance of the necessities particular to that moment. And this is valid for each religion.
I can suggest that we can consider the history of humankind as a single lifetime, then, maybe we can see the whole picture a little bit clearer. We frequently talk about the purpose of human life purpose of individuals, etc., but actually, we can think the whole history of humankind as a single human life, and the purpose is the same, a gradual and long developmentary preparation for the plan of duty, yes, to that activity, to that matter of the plan of duty. We will finish our task and leave. In that sense, the human stage is entirely a transition stage, neither the stages of plant and animal where the life progress automatically by instincts and almost non-comprehendingly, nor the stage of reaching the plan of duty. Just a stage of development between these two. It is a transition stage because, in the human stage, the being gradually takes the wheel, so to speak, the being gradually gets more comprehending, hence, becomes more able in involving its own development. Please, let me underline the word gradual. For example, in this book we read that this cycle of ours as humans is 70,000 years, in this frame of superficial time period, and getting experienced within 500 to 700 lifetimes during 70,000 years we become prepared for passing to the plan of duty. And of course, the plan of duty is also a transition stage to be prepared to the unitary. Of course, we cannot perceive our spirit, but as the vehicle our spirit built, our being's final aim is to be of the universe. And please notice that I don't talk about mastering something, no, I talk about becoming the universe itself. We will learn about this, whatever is the duty, then we will become that duty. And what I mean is not about becoming a god, a creator. Of course, I cannot say such a thing. I talk about becoming the thing your being is engaged with. I mean, all those imagination practices, all those work on the law of attraction etc. are all about reaching that level of development, to become the thing we are engaged with, to develop this talent, this ability. In other words, to widen the comprehension and consequently, to become harmonized with the universe, and this means to permeate the universe, to become the universe itself. And, please don't think space is only a minuscule part of the greater universe. You mentioned a sentence. All religions have helped mankind in elevating the level of reality equilibrium line of their conscience mechanisms to the uppermost levels of their possibilities of comprehension which are within the allowance of the necessities particular to that moment. Within the allowance of the necessities particular to that moment. Dear friends, this is a clear explanation why we don't have any right to make a judgment about the rules the religions established in their respective time periods. It means that we don't have to understand those rules just as they were established back then. Because these rules were established within the allowance of the necessities particular to that moment. They didn't set the absolute or perfect communal rules, no. Those rules were to move the community a little bit further than it was back then. And because those religions were successful in that task, we can now freely talk about these topics, one of the best signs of the fact that the communities got improved and advanced. Yes, as we talk about religions, it is better to take this historical stance into consideration. Those rules of those times were advancing those communities. And we should not judge those rules with our current level of knowledge, saying this concept is missing, why this or that issue was not mentioned etc.
All right. I continue reading a few more paragraphs of this passage. As we have just mentioned, in order to enunciate and teach the necessities of an established religion, and to ensure the initial adaptation of mankind to these teachings, a being in duty from the sublime plan of duty came in the midst of mankind by embodiment in the world, and mankind has called these embodied beings in duty prophets or saviors. Mankind, who came into the world in order to prepare for the plan of duty, are not left unattended. If this was the case, mankind could not have come so far in their evolved states. Therefore, communal states arise, as individuals do, always under the supervision and observation of the sublime plan of duty. In the universe, there are great beings in duty, who are charged with this duty. Mankind has begun, especially as their comprehension expands, to overflow the narrow physico-chemical rules of crude matter they have lived within, and have always struggled strenuously with the need to learn the reasons for their existence because of the intuitions and instincts filtered through their essence knowledge into their consciousness about the possible existence of some laws and orders based on more encompassing, wider comprehensions. The initial question preoccupying them was, who made the things and especially themselves that they see in their surroundings, and who governs their fate? Therefore, the concept of God is the first powerful reflection of a need that emerged in their comprehensions, and which originates from their essence beings, with the help of superior vibrations. From the moment their comprehension started to develop, mankind has begun to look for a God. However, previously, this need of theirs was in a simple state in accordance with their comprehension, which was yet too weak in regard to value. Therefore, man could not afford more than to search for his God within the limited possibilities of his 5 sense organs. The intuitions sent by the assisting beings that tried to respond to this need of theirs could only be possible through symbols that could address only the 5 sense organs of mankind. Mankind had not reached the levels of comprehension enabling them to understand the meanings those symbols actually indicated. Therefore, intuitions of divine concepts gave them only ways of symbolizing these with the things they knew as most powerful in their surroundings. For example, initially, the symbol of sun represented the god. A great river giving life to a country was again such a symbol. these symbols were sufficient only for a while for the simple comprehensions of early times. However, comprehensions were increasingly valued, and human comprehensions which increased in value with high sublime matter combinations were entering a state of dissatisfaction with these symbols. As a consequence of all these states, in order to introduce divine knowledge to mankind, from the plan of duty, beings in duty ascended into the world and established the religions of the book. Each of these religions completed some missing aspects of human communities. In this way, the paths of carrying mankind to a state of further advancement, which are delineated in accordance with the great plan of destiny, have been shown to mankind.
We read in this passage, mankind has called these embodied beings in duty prophets or saviors. Well, after the darkest hour of the night, a new dawn breaks.
Nevertheless, since its beginning, humankind always harbored an expectation for a savior. I mean, not only in the early history, but in the current era as well. Of course, there is an immense difference between the comprehension and the states of the times when those saviors came, and the comprehension and the states the current humankind reached. Still, this expectation is too obvious. Everyone expects that someone else must stand up, someone else must come forward, someone else must lead the way, someone else must carry us away, someone else must save us. However, in our era, humankind is going under tests and trials for individual responsibility. And also, I remember our dear master Mr. Erikdal's words whenever he told us about the religions and prophets. He had told us that in order to help a prophet to fulfill the duty of revelation, the plan of duty and the relevant plans organize the incarnations of at least 35 more people within the related period of time, either as assistants to the main task, or if necessary, to replace the intended ruler and guide because that duty is definitely to be realized, actualized. I remembered his words. And this part of the passage we read is very clear. It gives us a summary of how the concept of God is understood at the initial levels of comprehensions, and how the basic foundations were established by symbols, and how the first meanings gleaned from those symbols changed in time as the comprehensions got widened and values got elevated. Yes, let's continue reading the rest of the passage. Each religion has taught the things that have needed to be known by mankind up to the highest possible levels of intuition their comprehensions could reach within the uppermost possibilities of the realities they lived in, and has accomplished its duty perfectly. First, it introduced mankind to automatically preparing states of the discipline of the application of the intuition of duty through various forms of worship and obligations. And by teaching mankind to love each other, it also showed the directions belonging to the great preparation of advancement towards duty, with direct directives. It instilled in them all kinds of deeds that are necessary for orientating always to the higher realities of their consciences, by showing them various ways of virtue. And with various sanctions, it ensured the ways of delivering mankind to the illumined possibilities of the preparation to the intuition of duty. In short, religions made mankind converge on the threshold of the great transition cycle of the world, which is near to happening today. If religions were absent, mankind would be much more backward than its present level. In this way, the beings in duty to ensure the preparation of mankind for the plan of duty accomplished their duty perfectly. However, although mankind has passed from early times to the middle times, they were not yet properly endowed in regard to comprehension during the times religions were established. Because of this, religions which came from the same source, that is from the plan of duty, and followed the traces of great truths in the same degree, could only give these truths to mankind at particular times, and only in the forms they were able to understand. Thus, prophets and saviors could only disseminate the truths that needed to be disseminated among mankind by using symbols. Therefore, all great books of religion are full of powerful symbols carrying the intuition of truths, a piece of which was arranged and calculated in accordance with their respective times. For example, Judgment Day is one of these symbols, and it expresses the world's nearing cycle of transition, or the closing of this world cycle, which is a great truth. Likewise, in order to give intuitions enough for comprehensions about some truths that have deeper meanings, the concepts of heaven and hell are symbols, a piece of which is bestowed upon the world by the beings in duty, in accordance with sublime necessities. Each way of worship has been imposed on mankind through exact calculation, in accordance with the necessities of the times, life conditions, developmental states and equilibrium states of their consciences. And thus, by an automatic layout, preparations have been made for enabling mankind to orientate to the higher components of conscience, and consequently to become convenient for the higher plan on which today they are converging. In the meantime, innumerable virtues commanded by the religions, such as love, compassion, solidarity, forgiveness, tolerance, sacrifice, resignation, benevolence, honesty, sincerity, some obligations toward their fellow human beings, and even towards the ones other than their fellow human beings. Likewise, on the contrary, innumerable vices forbidden by the religions, such as selfishness, begrudging, enmity, envy, revenge, malice, dishonesty, hypocrisy, usurpation, stealing, homicide, have prepared mankind for higher comprehension plans, sometimes automatically and sometimes within a semi-comprehending illumination. Nevertheless, in time, development of these comprehensions towards a higher plan has increased so much that the need to understand and interpret the intuitions given by the religions through symbols emerged intensely in mankind. This should also be deemed as the total success of the religions. Today, mankind vehemently wishes for the utmost clear knowledge of the sublime intuitions evoked in them by these symbols. Nonetheless, only 2, or at the most, 3% of mankind can succeed in extracting these meanings from the powerful symbols which are successfully established by the books of religion. However, sublime beings in duty who always receive their directives from the divine plan have observed mankind's present longing and higher needs. And this book is a gift to the world from the part of the plan of duty which is engaged for the world. It contains the knowledge for mankind who are thirsty in their need to continue to seek and expect their evolution. Intuitions of the great truths have been given by the books of religions within symbols powerful enough for mankind in accordance with the times and necessities. And in this book, clear knowledge of the truths that will conclude the world revolution, of which premonitions were previously given. And the intuitions of the coming superworld cosmos are written that these will be the last reality of today's world, which is on the brink of a great revolution.
There is a very important paragraph in this part of the passage you read. The paragraph that begins as, "First, it introduced mankind to automatically preparing states of the discipline of the application of the intuition of duty through various forms of worship and obligations." I will try to explain which period of time this sentence mentions. This is the period of Moses, because Moses introduced the rules that to be observed automatically, the religious law. You have to live by these, otherwise you will be punished in this or that way. This first period or the religion mentioned in this sentence is about the religious laws that to be obeyed. The next sentence is, "And by teaching mankind to love each other, it also showed the directions belonging to the great preparation of advancement towards duty, with direct directives." This is a new period of time, the period of Jesus. There are direct directives but not religious laws, not strict rules. And about teaching people to love each other. This period has a wider perspective than the first period. Then comes the next sentence, from which I understand that third period requires both the sanctions and the love for the fellow human being, hence, the conscience, addressing the conscience mechanism within individuals and also, providing an order to the social or communal life. We read, "It instilled in them all kinds of deeds that are necessary for orientating always to the higher realities of their consciences." And this book explains in length and in detail how we can orient always to the higher realities. And please notice the last sentence in that paragraph. Ensured the ways of delivering mankind to the illumined possibilities of the preparation to the intuition of duty. Not to the plan of duty. To the intuition of duty. So, with the influences given in that third period, we humans are now preparing for the intuition of duty. With those influences given in the third period, we are provided with the illumined possibilities of the preparation to the intuition of duty. And in this third period, there are sanctions because we humans, due to the duality mechanism in matter's initial constitution, progress by making choices between two opposites, and because of this, we need to be guided towards the right path. If our dear friends read the books of the great religions back to back, they can easily follow this progress I try to summarize. First, the Old Testament, next, the New Testament, and third, the Quran. When you read the Quran, you can easily see that Aaron first gives the rule but leaves the final decision to the human, by saying, if you do this or don't this, it is more desirable for us. In a way, it implies that the rule is the norm, the tradition, but don't forget that you can use the higher part of the conscience. And in general, among the followers of these religions, the main conflict is between the ones who hear this reference to the higher realities of the conscience, and the ones who think the religious law and rules are not to be taken in a historical context. And this is so normal because even by disagreeing we still advance each other.
If you notice, we read in the divine order in the universe always about the mechanisms and functions of the concepts that we need to learn better. For religions, which are the reflections of the plans with the divine duty of revelations to humankind, again we read by which mechanism the revelations made, and which functions they executed in the development of human individual and human communities. There is no comparison between religions, because the important point is that their source is the same. All religions are organized by the higher plans with the duty of conveying these knowledge and revelations to humankind.
And in this mechanism, symbols have utmost significance. I understand that symbols utilized by religions have two main functions. First function is to conveying the influences needed to evoke some feelings in humans, let's say, awe, fear or restraint or avoidance, because such feelings and emotions have the purpose of keeping the groups and communities of human in a certain path or line. And the second function of the symbols has two tiers. As a human's comprehension widens, the initial feelings and emotions a symbol evoked decrease in intensity, but interestingly, individuals and/or communities don't or cannot discard those symbols, as though those symbols advance with them, and then, humans begin to glean more and higher meanings from those symbols. And this is the second tier function. As we try to do this, our intellectual side gets developed in tandem with our comprehension, and also, our intuitions, and as we spend efforts to understand those symbols better, regardless we understand them right or wrong, the main purpose is actualized, our mental processes to ponder, to understand, to reason get developed. And this is a very gradual progress, but in this way, first we utilize the influence of the symbols, and then, we utilize the information of the symbols. Still, we read here in this passage. Nonetheless, only 2, or at the most, 3% of mankind can succeed in extracting these meanings from the powerful symbols which are successfully established by the books of religion. All right, then together with our dear friends, we will try our best to extract more meanings from the symbols, similes and examples given in this book, as a gift to mankind of this last cycle of the world. Let's strengthen our mental muscles more and more, and consequently, widen our comprehensions.
And also, there is an emphasis in this passage. Let me read. In this book, clear knowledge of the truths that will conclude the world revolution, of which premonitions were previously given, and the intuitions of the coming super-world cosmos are written, that these will be the last reality of today's world, which is on the brink of a great revolution. It is pointing to the end of a cycle, and to the passing to a new cycle. And of course, as the scope of our comprehension widens, the meanings we attribute or assign to the symbols change as well. Just consider the difference between the state of humanity of today and the state of humanity of 1,000 years ago. Well, actually, even a month and day make a difference nowadays. Yes, we now live in an ocean of information, but we need to be discerning, careful and attentive to look for and find the knowledge and information that will orient and direct us to higher levels of our existence. That will help our development, and our tools for this discernment are our reason and our conscience. Well, with these words, let me wish you a good evening, dear friends. Hoping to see you next week.
Good evening, everyone. See you next week.